Hey, welcome to another episode of Wealth Rewired Podcast. My name is Mark Robinson and I am your host today. And I'm by myself today, guys. As you'll notice as you go through, sometimes it's Billy and sometimes it's me and sometimes it's Billy and myself, right? So this is how we like to do it. So the different angles and all that sort of stuff, because that's what we ultimately want you to think about, right? When you're rewiring your wealth, what were we told to start with? And what else is starting to make true? Because starting to make true. Yeah, that sounds about right. What I mean by that, guys, is, when I started as a licensed financial planner, I was told that there was a certain way to do it, right? And we used to call it the pie method. And with the pie method, we would have, imagine a circle and we would cut it, slice it up, and you'd have some Australian shares and some Australian property, some international shares, some international property. And as a financial planner, you would do this thing called, we would get you to do this thing called um, a risk profile, right? And depending on your risk profile, what would happen is we would actually have to keep those ratios, right? Or those slices of pie exactly the way. Yeah, pretty much as close as possible. Yeah. So we would have to rebalance the portfolio and what have you. Now, what would happen though is unfortunately is if, if say Australian shares went up and international shares went down, we would actually have to sell the performing asset to prop up the non-performing asset to get back into those ratios. Yeah. Now it's not exactly right. I mean, remember that everything we do is for educational purposes, and I like to say entertainment purposes only. Yeah, but it's close enough, guys, to give you an idea of what we had to do. And so that's what we call the old way. Yeah. And now we've developed what we call the wealth pyramid method. And this is where, with some education and, listening to podcasts and all that sort of stuff, guys, you will be able to have the ability to build out your own portfolios, but also have the clarity and the confidence to make financial decisions. And ultimately, that's what I want you to have, right? To have that clarity and that confidence for you to make financial decisions, but with your team, right? Whether you stick with a financial planner or you go it out and you bring experts in different areas that you want to invest in, that is the key. Yeah. And so that's what we ultimately want you to understand. So, the old way, the way we were wired, is what we call the pie method. And a different way to look at building a portfolio is, building what we call the wealth pyramid method. So what do I mean by that, right? So the old way that we used to be wired, right, was when we went into investing, it was whether it was property, shares, or anything, it was always about buy and hold, right? And it's all about a 30, 40, 50, 60-year plan. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was 18, 19, 20, man, I didn't even know, and this is actually true, guys, I didn't think I was going to live past the age of 21, right? I lived in a town that was party centric, right, so to speak, and I'll just leave it there. But it was a small town, and we had a lot of panel beaters. That's for those of you that don't know what a panel beater is. That fixed cars after accidents. So there was a lot of accidents and stuff, and I did see some friends who passed away quite early through young shenanigans. So I genuinely didn't think I was going to pass the age of 21. And I would say there's a lot of people out there, to do that. So, but it was also the way, and look, my parents, we didn't even talk about investing. It was years. I don't even can't remember how old I was, probably 25, maybe even older, when I found out that, Dad had been putting money away into, a pension. But it was an old school pension, right? The way he was wired pension. It was an annuity. And I am positive if we ran the numbers, he put more money into that pension than he's ever going to get out. Yeah, okay. So, these are the sort of things that we get wired about, right? So it's all about buy and hold and negative gearing. In here in Australia, we get these incredible tax benefits so that we can help the government, right, to give affordable housing. Now, they're not doing anything that's helping us either, right? So if you ever hear about, that the wealthy landlords are making, millions and millions of dollars through property investing, look, the smart ones are, okay? But unfortunately, what happens is, if you go down the wrong path and you buy the wrong property and you go into a buy and hold strategy and you're in a negatively geared property, that basically means negative gearing means that the property is costing more than what it is bringing in as an income. Yeah. So by doing that, right, is you can only buy a certain amount of properties before you run out of cash flow to prop up these properties. Yeah. Even blue chip stocks, right? An old method was to just buy and hold. There was nothing really explained to us about what do we do with the dividends? Should we do, nowadays, we do these things called dividend reinvestment plans. And this helps build out the portfolio in a long-term investment. Yeah. Managed funds are out there as well. And then just traditional businesses, go rent a premises or buy a premises and bricks and mortar and work out of an office, etc., etc. And 2020 sort of showed us that we don't need to actually go anywhere to have a business, right? So nowadays, though, I want you to start thinking about, okay, well, if I want that freedom, I want that independence, I want to be able to work anywhere in the world, then what sort of businesses, what sort of investments that have come along in the future, to help your future, right? Since you were wired to buy and hold, negatively geared, blue chip stocks, managed funds, traditional businesses. That's the key for me. Yeah. And so if you have a look at property as a good example, should you still go into buy and hold? Look, absolutely, right? But make sure you are dealing with experts who truly understand that, the right areas that will have equity grow faster than other areas. And then how do you use that equity to go and buy 2, 3, 4, 10 more properties? Yeah, you've got to get that balance there if you're going to go just down the one strategy. Whereas we've got access to experts who just do duplexes, right? And that's an incredible strategy. In fact, I know some of our members have actually, purchased one for, 555,000. It was about 6 or 7 years ago, now worth $1.8 million. And to get into the same property, you literally have to spend about 1.5. So you're still making a 300K uplift, right? But our members are now able to pull out well over $1 million in equity and go buy multiple properties. Yeah. Then you've got developments, you've got commercial properties, there's tokenized properties that you can get into. So if you can't afford to buy or borrow to go into properties, you can now buy one brick at a time, real world assets. That's a term that you'll hear us talk more about on the Wealth Rewired podcast, but it needs its own show. Yeah. So this is the key, right? And then even trading, you can go and find properties that, you may not have the ability to borrow, or you may not have the ability to have a cash flow, a deposit for it, right? But if you find it, you can actually charge people, sometimes huge amounts of money for you to, for them to acquire the property off you. And people who understand investing and understand, making profit and stuff, they always want it to be a win-win-win. So they're not going to just steal the deal off you. Well, 99% of the people won't. Okay, you'll get the odd one that will, but that's just business, right? So you'll get the odd person that'll go, man, you've done a great job. Here's 50 grand, 100 grand, sometimes more if the deal is generally worth it. Yeah. And then, like if we look at shares and foreign currency as an example, you no longer have to just do buy and hold, right? There are things called futures. You could do options, or put and calls. People are giving signals so you can trade, you can follow experts, right? Or they can trade on your behalf with some really cool software out there. You can do long strategies, short strategies. Again, you can do these things called ETFs, exchange traded funds. You can copy trade. Yeah. So again, you can copy the best of the best. Yeah. And even like precious metals, right? You can now get the real things. Store it in a private vault, right? If it gets too much. We never have all ours at home. Okay. So don't think that come to our house, you're going to find anything, people. But it's not just gold and silver these days. You can actually buy platinum. You can actually get diamonds, but be careful on the right. You got to pick the right diamonds. Yeah. And you can even get an automatic payment plan in place. So for $10 a week, $50 a week, you can buy it. And then when you've got enough, you can actually then, cash that in to get the real stuff and bring it home. Yeah. I hope this is all making sense, guys, And then we've got this incredible thing called cryptocurrency that's come out. And with cryptocurrency, right, there is so many different areas out there. So if someone tells you that they're an expert in cryptocurrency, ask them what part of it, right? Because there's so many strategies you can do. Bitcoin, the king or queen of all cryptos, right? Everything else other than Bitcoin is called an altcoin. Yeah. So they experts in alts, then there's what they call DeFi, which is decentralized finance, CeFi, which is centralized finance, right? There's signals out there. There's all the ICOs, initial coin offerings, initial exchange offerings, and then initial decentralized exchange offerings, right? There's NFTs out there, you might have seen that artwork, that stuff, but there's they're actually, their use case is actually way more than just art. Yeah. Real world assets, what I said, meme coins, staking, AI agents. There's so many. You can do copy trading. You can get signals. There are so many ways that you can make money in different strategies in the cryptocurrency. Yeah. And then when it comes to business, right? Gone are the days traditional businesses where, like I said, you go rent an office or a coffee shop or a food out restaurant or, whatever it is, just a professional office. Now you can build businesses and work anywhere from home, right? Anywhere from home. And it's important to really understand that you can work anywhere from home, righty? Anywhere from home. You go anywhere in the world, right? You can work anywhere in the world, right? Whether it's at home or, cafes or, serviced offices, etc., etc. But you can work online. You can do coaching, one of the fastest growing professions out there, right? And we're coaches ourselves, yeah. But we also have coaches. All right, we're not the experts in everything, and I've got a health coach at the moment. He's helping me, get targeted to drop a few pounds. You can't see my belly, but yeah, I'm slowly getting rid of it, which is good, right? There's drop shipping, there's managed Amazon stores these days where you don't have to do anything but front up the initial cost to get it up and running, and then someone manages it for you. There's Airbnbs now, right? You can be an Airbnb manager, right? You don't have to own the properties. You can sublease them. There's YouTube, there's gamers, there's podcast authors, there's influencers. There's AI influencers, there's AI agencies, man. There's so many other things, right? There's laptop income, network marketing. There are so many ways for you to build wealth, right? So, like I said, guys, we're always going to try and keep these sort of educational ones really short and sharp around that sort of 15-minute mark. So my challenge for you guys is to think about all the ways that you were wired in the past to invest, right? And think about all the ways that I've just said. What are some of the strategies that I've just spoken about, right? That will help you, achieve, right? What else do you think you could do that all the ones that I've mentioned, you might have to go back and re-listen, right? And go from there. Now, in the next episode, right, and we will make them back to back so you get them right, guys, is I'm actually going to go into more detail about what I call the wealth pyramid, and then I'm going to bring every single one of these, all these different strategies and types into the equation, right? So that's what I'm going to do in the next episode. So this, you can call this part one. The next one's going to be Wealth Rewired part 2 around asset classes and strategies and what have you, right? And guys, as always, if you like our channel, make sure you subscribe to it, whichever platform you are listening or watching it on. It really does help us grow. We want to serve as many people as we possibly can, especially those who are already starting to wake up, already starting to know that there are things out there that aren't quite right, aren't quite cricket, so to speak. And if you, genuinely get and understand what we do, we would love the light. Any comments as well, just drop it in there, guys. I'll make sure the team notify me, or if I see it, I'll definitely respond as well. But yeah, love and light, guys. The next time round will be all about the wealth pyramid. Bye for now.